Hello and welcome to this edition of the Edge webinars by the Hindu. These are education webinars. They typically deal with some aspects of education policy and offer tips to students on their career, courses of study, pedagogy, how things should be, and what they should do to prepare for a future, and so on. This time we are looking at a slightly different topic, but it's more current and deals with student welfare. Some time back, is an MBA student. He was Anjel Chakma. He's from Tripura, and he was attacked because some people thought he was not Indian, he was Chinese or whatever, and he suffered for many days after the attack in a hospital, and then eventually died. Apparently, his last words were, "I am Indian, I am not Chinese." Um, Poignant remarks, but that set many people thinking. There's been a lot of discussion, controversy. There have been many demands by student associations, students themselves, political parties across India about how students from the Northeast are being treated elsewhere in the country. What are their problems? And have things changed and have things become better? Have they become worse? Given that there is an increasing trend of animosity to people from other regions within India, and there is this certain anti-foreigner, anti-immigrant sentiment across India. It's across the world actually, and India is not doesn't seem to be immune to that. So as technology brings everybody closer, we seem to be able to communicate with diverse cultures and people across the world. But at the same time, such narrow minded bigotry is also coming up in our society. I believe it's not new. Our panelists say it's not new, it's been there. They point to what happened in 2014, many years ago, 12 years ago, when another student from Tripura was attacked and he died too. And following that, there was a committee set up, the Base Barua Committee. We will discuss that with the panelists and its recommendations and what happened and what can be done and so on and so forth. We have a very clued in panel to discuss this. We have Deepshanu Deb Burma. He is the president of Tribal Students Union in Tripura. He actually comes from the same district, I'm told, as Anjel Chakma. We have George Chakma is the convener of the Northeast Students Forum at JNU. We have Shovik Kumar Guha. He's an associate professor at NUJS. He will sort of give the institutional side of things. So welcome to these three. I asked Deepshanu, tell us what happened to Angel and what were the immediate events and repercussions. How did this family react? What was the government trying to do? What were the police? What were their attitudes and so on?
Good evening, everyone. First of all, I want to thank the Hindu for making me a part of this discussion. Firstly, I want to begin with a quote from Nelson Mandela. No one is born hating another person because of the color of his skin, his background, or his religion. People must learn to hate, and if they can hate, they can be taught to love. For love comes more naturally to the human heart than its opposite. Uh, Today's topic, making campuses inclusive for Northeast students, uh, it's a very heavy one, I believe, uh, because it's very unfortunate that we have to discuss this today when our brother from Tripura uh, going to study in another state. His last words were, "I'm not Chinese. I'm an Indian." It's a tragic incident. Last month, we from the TSU and SFI visited Angel Chakma's family. We spoke with his family members and his maternal uncle, who was there in Dehradun, I believe, from 10th of December. He remained with him till his final breath. His uncle told us that Angel, when Angel was admitted in hospital, he said to his uncle that he wanted to leave. but his injuries were simply too severe. Uh, the family's experience with the system has been a nightmare. Uh, they allege that after the tragic attack happened on 9th, it took extra 2 days to register the case. Initially, the police means police didn't wanted to take the case at the first sight, but when he and his younger brother Michael was attacked, uh, there were means the place Selakoi market, I believe, uh, there were bloods in that place also until 12th of December. Means he told us that the police didn't cordon off the place too. uh, right now we have seen five accused have been arrested and one is still on run. Many more don't know that Angel Chakma had already secured a job in a multinational company. He even told his father that once I join, you should take voluntary retirement and stay with the family. The reason was because since his childhood, he has seen his father serving the nation while living away from home. It is it is such an tragic incident. Means uh, we wanted to talk with his mother as well, but the situation was not uh, good enough that she can talk with us. But we have seen, yes, we have seen that the Uttarakhand government has provided approximately 4 lakh financial assistance to the family. But the main thing is that their response is really heartbreaking. They are clearly saying that what will we do with this money? We have lost our son. uh, they maintain that the police are still not cooperating with them and continuing to deny the fact of racial attack. Right now, their sole demand and our sole demand is justice. And we know that justice delayed is justice denied, and we are seeing the justice is getting delayed. We are still concerned that the investigations are going in the right way or what. But we must ask ourselves, where does this hatred comes from? It doesn't fall from the sky. It is carefully harvested. uh, in the last decade, we have watched justice become a joke. We see a dangerous pattern where those in power use divide and rule policy. Means it is not just a strategy but as a weapon. Uh, when uh, the top leadership remains silent and the minorities are targeted, that silence is a signal. When those who spread communal venom are rewarded with tickets and titles, the mob are the mob are protected. If you have the right political connection or belonging to the ruling party, the law doesn't apply to you. Criminals are just working free. They are just working free. Means we have seen that they are treated like heroes in many of the cases. When a society is celebrating its monsters just because they serve a specific political agenda, the system is in broken. It's being dismantled by purpose. Uh, the disease of prejudice is being used to keep us fighting one another while the real issues of the countries are being ignored. uh, Judging a person by what they eat, how they look, which language or how they speak, where they come from, is the new normal is being pushed upon us. This propaganda has turned neighbors into enemies, campuses into battlegrounds, and I believe to stop the hate, we must recognize that this violence is not accidental. It is a direct result of a politics that thrives on our division. And after everything, we just want that our brother Angel Chakma's accused, every single accused, need to be arrested, justice to be served as soon as possible. That's it.
Uh, Thanks, Dipshanu. It sad indeed, and one of the recommendations of the Besbarua committee was fast track courts and doing something to the judicial system that would be more sensitive to such cases. And sad to know that none of the accused have been apprehended. And you're saying that the police are not serious enough about this. Cause for concern, and I'm sure Northeast students are looking at it, reading it, and wondering. Students in other parts of India, of course. I ask George Chakma to tell us what are the if you can walk us back through the previous case, the big high-profile case that happened in 2014, the result of it, and what's the impact? What has happened since then?
Well, thank you for having me on this webinar. I'm really glad to be part of this conversation. Well, let me begin by saying this very sort of clearly that racism is not a matter of individual attitude or bad behavior. It's not about someone being rude or insensitive. Racism in India is a structural problem. It's deeply embedded in the very way our society is organized. It's a structure of inequality and exclusion. So this structure actually allows some people to believe that those who look different from them, especially people from the Northeast, are inferior, that they can be excluded, ill-treated, mocked, or disrespected without any consequence. So these beliefs actually don't come out of nowhere, as already stated by Deepshanu. They come from an unequal social order, and that is why racism is closely connected to other social sort of structures of power, and um, such as if I may, such as like the caste system or patriarchy. So I mean, at its core, it's the same conviction that some people are superior to others because of who they are, whether on the basis of their caste, religion, gender, or in our case, race and appearance. So I mean, once we recognize racism as a structural problem, then we can begin to think seriously about how to address it. And one thing becomes very clear, that by simply asking people to behave well or respect everyone, things like that is not enough. In fact, it's largely fruitless. So we often see leaders and politicians shedding what I can honestly call only crocodiles tears, urging society to be kinder, but without any institutional mechanisms and legal safeguards. I mean, all of this remains empty talk. So because structural is very racism is very much structural, it requires institutional responses. And yeah, so the recent Angel Chakma incident immediately reminded me of what happened exactly 12 years ago. In January 2014, Nido Tanya, another student from Arunachal, was brutally beaten and murdered here in Lajpat Nagar in Delhi in a similar racially motivated attack. So, following that incident, the government constituted the Besbura committee to examine the problems faced by the people from the Northeast in mainland India, especially the students. So the committee made several important observations and recommendations. Of them, was the creation of a special police unit, and to address the security concerns of the Northeastern communities in and that was supposed to work in coordination with the student and community leaders. It also clearly identified accommodation as one of the biggest challenges faced by Northeastern students. And honestly, I can speak about this from my own personal experience. So here in, especially in Delhi, since I've been in Delhi, I mean, landlords exploit tenants in general, yes, but Northeastern students face a very specific kind of harassment. So we are routinely questioned about our food habits, stereotyped and treated with suspicion. Landlords seem to have a ready-made questionnaire, specifically designed for us, ranging from, they ask questions ranging from what we eat to assumptions that we are some sort of drug abusers or something. It's even worse for women students. So women students from the northeastern region are often stereotyped as, loose or easy, and their character is always constantly questioned. So even university and college campuses, which are supposed to be safe spaces, almost like bubbles, are no better. These spaces are not insulated from society, right? So they are simply an extension of it. So all the prejudices that we have in society, and things like exclusion and all the power relations that are prevalent in society outside, find their way inside campuses as well, right? So racism, however, is not only about physical violence or racial slurs. It's tragic that we are reminded of racism only when someone is killed. Last time it was Nido Tanya, this time it is Angel. But racism is an everyday reality. So it exists in things like, mundane things like microaggression, in taunts, in jokes, in the way we are looked at and spoken to. I mean, just a few days ago, another youth from Arunachal Pradesh was beaten up here in Delhi, in Karol Bagh area of Delhi, and hardly anyone is talking about it. That tells us something important, right? That racism in India is so normalized, it's socialized, and honestly, that is both horrifying and deeply saddening, right? So, what makes the situation even worse is that there is no legal recognition of race or racism in India. What we describe as racism or racially motivated violence is often treated by the state as a routine law and order issue, as ordinary law and order issue. So, ordinary criminal sections from the BNS are applied without acknowledging the racial nature of the crime. In fact, in the Anjel Chakma case in Dehradun, the SSP a few days back made a public statement that the attack was not racially motivated, that it was merely a regular brawl between two groups of people. So there is not even an acknowledgement of the problem to begin with, right? Let alone a serious attempt to address it. So I believe until we name racism for what it is, recognize it structurally, and respond to it institutionally, I mean, we will keep repeating this cycle of violence and denial and forgetting, right? So the Angel Chakma chapter will be closed. A few years down the line, someone else will be victimized, and we will come back to having our discussions. And we will keep reminding that there have been discussions in the past, there have been incidences in the past, there have been committees and recommendations were made, but no implementations happened. I mean, state and universities especially don't take any notice of it, and especially private universities. So many of the private universities, they set up their shop in many of the places in the northeast, and to attract a lot of young students, and they come here with so many ideas about the world, and so many goals, ambitions, and sadly these things happen. So there has to be institutional response, but before that there has to be an acknowledgement that yes, there is racism, and then it's a specific kind of problem, and then only we can think about tackling the issue stuff. Yeah, thank you.
Certainly a sad and disturbing reality that our campuses have this virus and not much is being done institutionally. Yes, that's what you're saying. Um, I ask Shovik, what would you say? How is it in your institution? I mean, I don't want to go too much into that, but just see it as somebody who's in the administrative side of things. What is your take on this? Are institutions even
Well,
aware this is a serious issue, especially those with a substantial number of students from the Northeast?
now, the thing is that as I was listening to both George and uh, sorry, as I was listening to both George and Dipshanu, I kept on thinking about one thing, that one of the major things that the universities, the institutions, the governments, the people who are in decision making authority with regard to these matters have so far failed to do is probably to listen to the people who are actually at the receiving end of it. As in, when I was very, although this is a tragic event that has brought us together for the purpose of this discussion. And I was very impressed even yesterday when we were having this conversation, and today itself for the event. that Deepshanu and George seem to have not only identified the obvious aspects of the problem, but also the subtle nuances behind it, and they have very clear idea about some of the steps which can be taken in order to address this matter. And unfortunately, that is somewhere that we have been lacking as institutions, as the rest of them, as people who are forming the ecosystem surrounding the students. We have not been listening to them when they're keeping on telling us over and over again that this is what the problem is. This needs to be acknowledged, this needs to be recognized, and need to be accorded the gravity that is due to it. And that's one of the reasons why this escalating threat of racial violence and hate crimes and all of this is happening, right? As in, we're talking about Angel Chakma, we have talked about Ido Tania, and the reason why these two people are actually being that their plight is being listened to is because of the fact that it has led to perhaps the worst of tragedies, right? But it's not, as has been mentioned already. It's not these are not isolated incidents. It's a pattern. This pattern, and when a pattern is extending over decades, then you no longer say that this is something which is unfortunate, which is something which could have been avoided. It's a one-off scenario, because it's not. It's inevitable. When you start othering a certain part of the country's population, when you start othering certain students, when you start looking at them differently than you do to the other students, then these things eventually will pile up. So we are getting to hear of all these, how the authorities are occasionally claiming that the attack itself on Angel Chakma might not even have been racially motivated. I don't know how that's possible, because just even if we keep aside the Chakma family's contention about the racist slurs, about the other abuses that he had to be subjected to, we know, we can see all around us that these things are taking place on a regular basis. These are fatal incidents, but the students from Northeast face routine verbal abuse, physical assault, questioning about their nationality, daily harassment in these public spaces, education institutions, even residential neighborhoods. And I believe some time back there was this survey which was conducted in the Delhi NCR region, wherein as high a number as 67% of the entire people from belonging to the northeastern states, they had reported facing some kind of discrimination because of their ethnic and racial origin. And within the universities, unfortunately, I mean, the university is supposed to be safe spaces for students, right? But herein also the students have been encountering multiple features of discrimination that extends beyond racial violence to very, very systemic exclusion. Sexual harassment remains a persistent problem. And institutional responses so far have been very, very inadequate. Even, I mean, we are probably very. I come from an institution where probably the more pronounced effects of these kind of matters are thankfully yet to be felt. Maybe that is, I wish I could say that that's because that institution is located in a city which is supposed to be a little bit more enlightened than accepting. But I myself have actually seen that these kind of racial slurs, even if thrown at a very
Or in Kolkata.
light-hearted humor, yes, at Kolkata, I wish that I could say that the racial slurs do not happen there, but they do. I have seen that happen around me, and that's certainly something that we need to concern ourselves with. When we talk about an institution, a premier institution like the JNU, and that entire Barrack hostel controversy which had broken up, there was a very solid commitment which was met to the Northeast Council, that when the Barrack hostel would be finally operationalized, there would be I think a 75 is 25 3:1 seat sharing ratio for them in favor of the Northeast students. And eventually, when it was inaugurated, I believe, I mean, the authorities started saying, well, there is not going to be no regional reservation. But this is not this kind of protection. I mean, this is right now a far more serious matter than simply trying to have accommodation for the students. It's now a safety issue. right? So the university might take a position that accommodating students in a specific hostel would lead to ghettoization. I believe that's the term which has been used, but that's very, very patronizing. This is because right now I believe that it's almost dismissive of the legitimate safety and cultural concerns of the students. And these kind of cultural exclusions range from everything, like food, the hostel food policies that exclude northeast cuisines, their dietary practices, and the food itself. I have heard about the things about those students who try to live outside campus, etc., that northeastern food itself becomes the target of stereotyping and exclusion. And this exclusion from this basic dietary autonomy, this symbolizes and reinforces the broader message that somewhere the northeastern identities and cultures are unwelcome within university spaces. And I mean, I'm actually slightly I was just talking about this earlier also, that I'm slightly in two minds whether I should consider that the when we talk about the students belonging to those parts of the country, I slightly hesitate to call them northeastern students, because that's also somewhere I'm trying to forcibly say that they form a homogeneous whole, which they don't. They belong to different and states. They have their own different cultures and subcultures, and we should definitely respect that in terms of their identity. These are not northeastern students. These are students from Meghalaya, students from Assam, Nagaland, Mizoram, Tripura, and separate. And then what there is one thing common, all of them. They have come down. They have come down here to other parts of the country, a country that they are proud to call their own, and that they have a lot of dreams. They will just. They're not asking for the sky. They're just asking that they be allowed to pursue their studies, their future in the same conditions that some of us take for granted, right? And they, be it language barriers and communication challenges, be it housing and accommodation discrimination, landlords routinely refusing to rent to these students based on appearance, their ethnic background, stereotypes about dietary lifestyle practices. We have heard this all. I mean, today itself, Dipshani and others talked about this. And the overall social exclusion and psychological toll that it has, this feelings of alienation that takes place within campus communities, the cumulative effect of daily racial taunt, stereotyping, microaggressions, these are very easily dismissed as jokes or teasing, but it creates, in my opinion, a persistent vulnerability and psychological distress. And eventually, a lot of students end up, getting silenced or withdraw. They go through the withdrawal syndrome as coping mechanisms. They start to think that maybe discrimination is an inevitable cost of studying outside their home region. And that's probably one of the most saddest things to ever get to hear as a teacher. You see, we talk about the Besbarua committee. Even that had been triggered by a tragic event back in 2014, and I doubt that there have been multiple recommendations that the committee had made. Some of them would have taken longer period of time in order to get implemented. Some of them were very low hanging fruits. Basic specific police initiatives, nodal police stations which are designated specifically for addressing concerns for northeastern people, facilities for legal assistance, getting lawyers, especially those belonging to the northeastern states, to provide occasional legal support services to help victims of discrimination, racial violences. These were not supposed to be things which were very difficult to be done. Yes, there were long-term events also. They talked about having legislative measures, enactment of new or strict laws addressing racial discrimination, and awareness, grievance redressal things, dedicated social media support, or all of these can be done. It's not that there was some reason why it took us 11 years to begin be talking about it. And as I believe George was also saying, that another 10 years, 5 years later, we will see unfortunately, another tragic event, and then we will again start discussing that today what could have been done. So that could have been done and should have been done is a sort of a maze out of which we don't seem to find any issues. We have there was supposed to be UGC guidelines, which are in reality they are supposed to be equal opportunity cells, anti-discrimination officers to be appointed across institutions. In 2025 itself, I believe the UGC came up with some draft regulations which was supposed to strengthen the UGC's authority to tackle discrimination on multiple grounds, of
Yes.
which these are
Yes.
supposed to be factors.
Yeah.
Even Supreme Court had directed the UGC, I believe, last year itself, based on certain other PILs which were filed by other students, not from Northeast, but for things that how can we develop effective mechanisms to combat discrimination on these kind of basis. But if we talk about that's a separate thing for the state to think about. What about the universities? What kind of structural reforms we can undertake as an institution? Can we have a dedicated hostel space with meaningful reservations? Because it's not, it can actually reduce psychological burden. It can actually provide safe community support. These are proven facts which have come out of studies. The original intent of the barrack hostel was to offer a culturally sensitive space, not to make it into a ghetto. Inclusive hostel food policies. Food is fundamental to belonging and cultural identity. When you exclude northeastern cuisines from hostel menus completely, that amounts to institutional othering. If we can have dedicated northeastern student cells, in fact, as per the HRMB directive, we were supposed to, every university was supposed to have formal northeast cell with faculty coordinators from these regions preferably. And the purpose of these cells were not only to serve as mere cultural programming, they were supposed to provide mentoring, support, mediation with hostel authorities, and some kind of advocacy for systemic changes, etc. Language support programs. I mean, I can go on. Sensitization awareness programs. Universities can maintain a list of landlords who are willing to rent to all students without discrimination. Not very difficult, these things are. Where university, I mean, of course, there are some universities who cannot manage to have provide accommodation to all the students within campus. But why can't we have coordinated off-campus housing initiatives? We can go on. Then I remember when the Delhi police some time back had come up with this dedicated hotline number for students for people from northeastern community, not only for students. And it took, I think, several years to just make that they make that number toll free, because I was told by the student that a lot of people who respond on these helplines, they do not speak English clearly, and it becomes very often it becomes difficult for the northeastern students to communicate the problem they're facing. So 20-25 minutes etc can go on during a call. Students find that charges are actually increasing, etc. This was probably before all of today's free data and stuff like that, but it took us some time to actually get this number toll free. Why can't we have something like that for every single state? No reason why. Delhi, of course, being the capital, has a little bit more focus on it, media focus and attention and everything. So we are doing it now. So we can also have a national database which documents this racial evidence, because without documentation, these are all going to be separate, isolated incidents and tagged as such. But when you have this kind of documentation which has systemic discrimination, then you have to at some point of time take it seriously, right? And there have been talks about this curriculum integration at school and university levels, which include accurate information, etc. While I'm not very, I'm not sure about the how that is going to immediately have an effect or positive effect on these kind of problems, but they're not bad things. Social media monitoring can be a good idea to a certain extent. Protocols for monitoring and removing derogatory content, memes, harassments, targeting northeastern people on these platforms. Institutionally, inter-ministry coordination, state level task forces, these are all there. But last, I'll just finish my side, and I'm really interested to listen to the others on this matter and also take questions. That at the end of the day, these things, when we keep quiet about and see these kind of things happen around us, we are being very much part of the problem. And when we try to do things saying that you are guests, we should treat you better, they're not guests. They're part of they're exactly part of the same country as we are. So the only reason that we have to give them any kind of protection, to help them, is probably to ensure that these are our students. They represent the future, and as a present, we have a dedicated obligation to help protect and preserve our future. That's what the obligation lies, not that of a guest or a host. Yeah, that's it from my side. Thank you.
Thanks, Shavik. We will come back to what can institutions do off campus. That's a critical part of this whole problem. I will highlight a couple of, they're not questions, but comments, offering sympathy and solidarity. Making campuses inclusive for Northeast students is a necessary step to protect our democratic essence of unity and diversity, which makes us all real Bharatiya, real Indian, real Hindustani, or I say above all, true citizens of our country. Anjel Chakma's father is a serving BSF Jawan. And as Dipchanu was saying, he was onto a career he had got a job in a multinational. So he was looking forward to a career and making it, and sad that this happened. Now tell us both, I asked George and Dipshanu, when Northeast students prepare to come to the other parts of India, what is their thinking? Are they expecting that they will be treated differently, or do they sort of are they apprehensive, or we going to a place where we may not belong, or that we may not have that sense of belonging like it's in a home? So, what is their thinking? What are they thinking? Has this event changed their perception? Go ahead, Diksha.
Yes, there is a change in the perception of the northeastern students because uh, a place where means Dehradun is also a hilly region. Means there is a term that hilly regions people are very nice and very calm. But we have seen this tragic attack on that state. But our northeastern students are still thinking that means we can give an example of Angel Chakma's brother, younger brother, Michael Chakma. He was also studying there. Means there is a question in means there will be a question that whether he will go back in Dehradun for his studies to continue or what. Uh, yes, there are many problems right now, but we all, not only from the northeast, we all have to be together. Not just because our brother Angel Chakma was racially attacked, but we need to be together in this time. Not because my facial recognition is like my eyes are small, someone from North India, his height is good. No, means we have to be together right now in this situation.
Okay. George, would you tell us what is the thinking of students in the Northeast when they are thinking of coming?
Well, I think there is an acknowledgement that there are problems here in India, that if you are sort of deciding to come here in mainland India, what we call as mainland India, that you'll be facing some kind of issues and all. But students do still have to come here. I mean, the elephant in the room is that there are simply no opportunities back home, right? And it indicates towards a
Right.
greater problem with sort of resource distribution or how we conceptualize the country itself, right? So if we are specifically talking about education institutions, I mean, we can count on our fingertips how many quality educational central institutions are located in all the 8 states combined. There's just one IIT and some NITs, right? So then students have to come here. That's the thing. They have to come here for opportunities, for accessing better education, right? I mean, um, I think we all know that back home that there are problems here, and then people how people would treat. So it's not that we love to be treated badly, and that's why we come here. No, we come here because we don't have opportunities back home, right? So that's the big main issue here. And even if there are central institutions like NITs, for instance, there are a couple of NITs in the northeast, right? So the nature of those NITs is, even though they are geographically located in the northeast, they represent sort of, again, very what we call, what we would normalize as Indian. That is, if you look at the food menu, for instance, in the NIT campuses in the northeast, so they represent the very North Indian menu. I mean, you get roti, dal, chawal. I mean, that's the menu. So I'm not saying that menu is going to solve anything. It's just an indication of the fact that there are no opportunities there. And even if there are institutions, those institutions do not cater to the local region, to the local population. They are again, those couple of central institutions, they are again central in nature, right? So then it's a fact, it's the reality that we don't come here to get discriminated upon, to get mocked upon. We come here because there is lack of opportunity back home. There are no good institutions. There are no jobs there. There are in some states like Manipur and others, it's conflict is another layer of problem there, right? In Tripura, for instance, unemployment is a huge problem, right? So because of these problems we come here. We don't come here just to that oh, we love whatever, like we get discriminated upon and stereotype, we love that. No, it's a compulsion rather. And then that indicates towards a bigger problem of how resources distributed in the country and how we conceptualize the country. That's another story. But yeah, primarily it's that. I mean, it's a compulsion. It's not a choice. And even if there is a section of students who come here out of choice, in the sense that they have this dreamy idea of, metropolitan cities. I agree, there is a section of students who have this dreamy idea of metropolitan cities, big cities. Everyone has the right to dream, right? Everyone has the right to dream and to sort of try to make their lives better. So everyone has that right. But the majority of students come here simply because there are no opportunities back home. There are no quality educational institutions. That's the primary reason, right? And yeah, I think we all acknowledge that. We all know that back home, that there are problems in the country, and then we are aware that what we are going to face. But I mean, come on, that's at the level of, maybe some jokes and some stereotyping. Definitely no one thinks that they're going to be attacked and murdered here. I mean, that's next level, right? And also, as Dipshanu pointed out, I mean, Dehradun, and so that's some one idea that people have there, right? Maybe the Pahari regions will be better than the plain regions. But I mean, the recent incident has again totally sort of crashed that idea. So yeah, I mean,
It's a sad,
yeah.
sad reality that they come with some, that they need to cope, that they should have a coping mechanism to study in India. Um, I will ask a follow-up question, which is that I did talk about that before. What can institutions do in campus? On campus, you have some control, but as both these incidents happen outside campus, what can institutions do to facilitate a more welcoming, safer off-campus experience for these students? I would ask all of you to speak about this. Dikshanu, would you like to start?
Sure. Uh, Institutions means we again have to look back 12 years ago. The Bejborua committee has referred many things. Means still now, b- means many of the recommendations are not implemented. So we can take some of the suggestions from them, that committee, and in right now in present uh, the situation, uh, we can means institution can form northeast student cell. Every institution should form northeast student cell, I believe. And uh, as my idea that not only forming northeast student cell means uh, the concept of mainland India is totally wrong. What is mainland India? Mainland India, I believe, uh, they are bringing the concept of mainland India, that the center of the India and Western India is only mainland India. Why not the Northeast India is mainland India? Every part of the India is mainland India, I believe. So means institutions should uh, means take steps for the northeast students. Even if the institutions have one student, two student, three student, or 200 students, they should ask their means suggestion also. Means if you are feeling safe or what, means what are your ideas about means racial attacks. Means uh, we just don't have to stick on only to the students. We can ask the students family members. It is not about the students, no, it is about means every single person. I'm referring about means working individuals too. The incident happened with Angel Chakma was I believe 4 kilometers away from his institution. Means uh, the awareness need to be uh, established between students, localites, and everyone, I believe.
George, would you like to speak? Yeah. What can institutions do off campus? They have a responsibility to their students.
Right. Yes, yes. So definitely they do have a responsibility. I mean, the very fact that students have to put up in accommodation outside campuses, is a problem, right? Because universities should provide safe spaces. So even if they can't provide sort of hostels, in campus hostels, it's their duty to ensure the safety of students who are living outside. And of course, so they can coordinate with sort of the local landlords or the local authority to establish this sort of, to designate some places, right? That's one way to go ahead. But I think primarily the more important thing is communications. Institutions need to communicate with the students community, the students from the northeast, right? So it's they need institution really need to shed this patronizing uh, attitude, this condescending attitude, that they know better, they know the best what's what's good for us. They need to talk to us, they need to listen, right? So I mean, they can form committees and maybe nodal officers, whatever. I can give you an example. So in JNU, definitely there is a nodal officer, but I've been the convener of NESA when I've never heard from him, right? So these are just, on paper it sounds good, but the primary reality is that they don't communicate, they don't bother to communicate, they just decide for themselves whatever is good for us and whatever is not good for them, right? So that's a problem. And so I think the first step is communication, communicate with us, right? So there are the institutions can definitely designate some spaces, some buildings, some localities within, and some areas, and maybe talk to some landlords, sensitize, right? Sensitize that it's, and maybe when students who take admission, and they uh, institution can have some, can designate some person, individuals or committee to assist, students coming from the northeast in getting accommodation. So again, as it was mentioned earlier, in language barrier is a huge problem. So students who come here, especially new students, they have a hard time finding accommodation, they have a hard time talking, to landlords and people outside the campus trying to arrange accommodation. So I think that assistance part can be there, right? They can designate, and it doesn't take much, right? It's just assigning someone, some individual or a couple of people. Okay, you are the nodal officer, you can just communicate with them and assist them, in the sense that, okay, there is the language barrier, there is the other sort of stereotyping and other things that happen. So that communication part has to be, then institution can become that, play the role of that bridge between the localities outside, right outside the campuses, and the students, right? So institutions do have a huge role to play. And if I may point out, private institutions I believe have a bigger role to play, because they go out of their way to attract students from these places, very backward places in the northeast. I mean, you would be surprised to find students in Dehradun coming from very remote areas of the northeast, right? All these private institutions. So if they can afford to attract students from very remote areas of the region, they do have the duty to arrange safe accommodation for them, right? And again, that's the important part. I believe the institution should play the role of the bridge, sort of communication bridge between localities, landlords, and sort of the local communities and the northeastern students, right? So I believe primarily that's really the first important step that has to be established. Communication is extremely important.
Important point, especially now you bring that many private institutions actually target, they market their institutions in the Northeast to attract students, make it easier for them off campus too. Important point, George. I'll highlight this question as a curious person. Arib Ibrahim, he's asking, as a curious person myself, how do subtle comments or curiosity about your food, clothing, or language impact your sense of belonging on campus? You must have gone through this. How did you feel? What were the questions? What would people ask you? What do you eat?
Well, if I may recall an anecdote, so when I was first here I joined JNU for my bachelor's. So obviously I was asked, where you come from. So I said, yeah, Tripura. I'm from Tripura. Okay, where is Tripura? Here's the thing. So people, when they talk, even if when they know a thing or two about Northeast, it's mostly limited to Assam and Manipur, right? So Tripura is some place in some corner of the region that's already remote, right? So it's like a black hole. So the assumption is, okay, it must be, it sounds like a place that's in down south, because it sounds like Tirupura. Okay. So I tell them, no, it's a place in the northeast. It borders Bangladesh, and in some far corner of the country. So the second question was, does it snow there? I mean, does snowfall occur there? Because the idea is that everyone eats momo, and then it's all cold and mountainous region, right? So I go along and I play along. I say, yeah, yeah, yeah. It, the snowfall does occur there, and then that's one way to tackle with these questions, And the more saddening part is that the person who asked me this question was a PhD student here in JNU, a PhD student,
In
right?
JNU.
In JNU, right? So these are really subtle form of, okay, one may call ignorance, but then there are other more serious sort of questions that I've been asked. I've been asked once, why do we Northeasterns not speak in an Indian accent? I mean, whatever that meant, right? What is even an Indian accent? I don't know. Okay, right? And of course, these questions like, do you eat dogs? Do you eat monkeys? These questions are very normal, very normal. So here in
Oh,
Delhi,
really?
people,
Hmm.
it's just like saying, oh, today you eat chicken and mutton, tomorrow you may eat human being. I don't know. This assumptions part, that they assume one thing to another and then there's something. And I mean, it's perfectly fine to not know everything under the sun, right? But the problem lies when they assume, right? So these questions come from not a place of curiosity. These questions come from a place of assumption, right? Racism is not about acknowledging that you don't know. Racism is that asserting that you know, assuming that and which is not actually fact, which is a stereotype that you believe to be a fact. That is racism, right? So these questions, I mean, these are pretty normal questions. I've been asked by a faculty member here in one of the institutions in Delhi that uh, why do Northeastern students party a lot in hostel rooms? I mean, apparently Northeastern students love to party in hostel rooms, so that's some stereotype. And I've been asked about it by a faculty member, not a student again, right? So it may appear harmless, but if these stereotypes, if they believe that these are actually fact, real, facts about us, then I mean, it's scary. So if someday they may be in positions of power and whatever, and then if they go by these stereotypes, I don't know. It's really scary. I mean, and here's the thing: those goons who attacked Angel and the people who ask this kind of questions, what's really the difference between them and these people, right? So even they had some kind of assumptions that okay, these people indulge in all kind of things, and hence it makes them less of a human being, inferior human beings, right? And here they are just sort of branding me as less of a human being, because if you talk about the assumptions, they share the assumptions, right? So these are some incidents that I can recall, and trust me, these are very common. Even
Hmm.
till date, if I go to some time back, I went to visit the Taj Mahal. I've been to Taj Mahal like more than 2 3 times, and each time I showed them my Aadhaar card. Even that is not a proof of citizenship. Are you from Nepal? Are you? Here's my Aadhaar card. Here's my election ID. But no, they still have to ask. I mean, I'm showing you an ID card, right? I have my Aadhaar card. I have my driving license. I can show you my election ID. No, they still have to confirm verbally that that I'm an Indian citizen, right? And also I have a problem with the discourse that we have to remind the world, remind India, the entire society, that Angel's father is a serving BSF, is a head constable in the BSF. I mean, that's sad that we have to remind the country that, firstly, because yes, obviously, yes, it's fact that he's serving and then he's serving the nation, but Angel, I mean, we all, including us, I mean, Angel and all of us, we deserve to be respected because we're human beings, right? It doesn't have to do with the fact that uh, we serve in some government service or like whatever, right? The very fact that we are human beings, we deserve to be respected. And secondly, we are citizens of this country. It doesn't matter what profession, I mean, or my parents are in. So it's like catering to that very nationalist idea of the Indian society that okay, someone deserves special respect because his father is in the forces, which is fine. But I have a problem with that approach, right? So and again, if we stick to this discourse, I don't think we are going to tackle the sort of the root of the problem, right? So we need to reflect critically and also reflect like the very discourse that how it's being talked about and how it's being discussed.
And if I may just add one point to that,
Go ahead.
I'm marveling at what George is saying, and very impressed about the maturity that his comments actually contain also. So this incident that I'm talking about is not something which had taken place at my university. I was visiting another university, a friend from one of the northeastern states actually, and their university actually allowed the students to occasionally cook basic food in their hostel rooms. And he was since I was visiting, he was trying to cook a homemade dish which had bamboo shoots and some fermented foods, which I believe is essential to many northeastern cuisines. And I could see several. I mean, it's not that it was in any way causing any problem in terms of smoke or smell. I mean, I have a very pronounced sense of smell, but I also couldn't sitting there. I couldn't feel anything different other than ordinary dish being cooked. But I could see that several other students who were passing that room, just outside that room, they would pinch their nose and say, "What is this smelly, disgusting?" They're making faces and covering their noses in the corridor. And I asked my friend that, isn't this bothering? I mean, is this natural? Is this something that you have to face on a day-to-day basis? And I mean, he looked at me, he shrugged. I mean, I was also a lot younger and not more naive probably back in those days. And this incident is not only it's not only a simple case of saying that this is something, this is food, this is a culture, this is a kind of a society about which I don't have much of an information, and that's something like I would gladly admit that I don't know a lot, but that's what you learn, right? When you meet with other people from other regions, that's how the assimilation works. It's you get to learn about them, they get to learn about you, etc. But this entire thing, I could see that he said that I never like to cook. Oh, but the only reason why I occasionally have to in my room is because of the fact the hostel food which we are being offered is very much incompatible with, forget about taste preference, my nutritional needs. He said, I fall sick if I eat a lot of hostel food. It's too spicy for me. So either I have to cook or I have to eat from outside. And it's not only about the cooking habit, as George rightly said. This is something which is way more ingrained than that. I also used to be part of this organization, the charitable trust, which used to identify students from different parts of the country, underprivileged students, and if they're interested in studying law, the organization would train them. And I remember this thing very clearly. So there was this student, and who was a girl student from the north, one of the northeastern states, and she came from a very underprivileged background and all. So, but once she had been given a scholarship and she was studying at a national law university, so what she used to do was she would have save up a lot of her own tuition money, and she would try to do this and that, some odd jobs, and save some money. And with that, she had just one an occasional habit that she would buy a nice dress. Maybe she would buy that one dress after a year, as in by saving up some money, etc. But I remember, so she had wore this dress to one of their freshers programs, and I got multiple calls and messages, emails, etc., from people, including faculty members from that particular organization, that this person is supposed to be a scholarship student, she's supposed to come from a background, then how is she being able to afford such dresses? And that itself, it would have been problematic. But the next part was that, are you sure you have carried out the background check properly? These people, these students are from Northeast. So have you managed to go down there, check that whether she really comes from an underprivileged background or not? Now they can be very crafty. And I was amazed to see that from point A to point B how the prejudice is running. And it's not about, in this Anjel Chakma's case, as George rightly pointed out, his father belongs to the armed forces. But why on earth should I have to prove that my father belongs to the armed forces and my father belongs to a sarkar, government institution, to show that I'm that much dedicated towards the country? I have a right to be in there in the country. That's just not the way things are supposed to work. And you were talking about how institutions can do just one small thing, basically, at that point. A basic scenario when students, that there are two ways in which the institution can look at this. One is the proactive part. What are things which we can do without being reactive, as in maintain a list of landlords, talk to them, maybe get a faculty member to accompany the students when they're going to these landlords to get a house on rent or a flat on rent, things like that. The other part is that these nodal persons or these people who are put in charge of these kind of responsibilities, they should not look into this as added burden or nuisance. If somebody is like that, I would rather not that person have be there as a nodal person. It should be some pride that, what can I do to help? You tell me what are things we can do. How are you be? How many people? An indication is that how many times this person is actually approaching a student under their care and asking, are everything, I mean, is everything all right with you? Is there anything that you are facing? You tell me what is the problem. Let's have a conversation over a cup of coffee or something like that. You start doing things, you start listening to them, and you figure out there can be most of the problem solutions to the problems you would find just if you listen to them a little bit. And it's not that they're not asking for much. As has been pointed out, there are institutions who are bringing these people, attracting these people by giving the quote unquote bait of a very bright future in different parts of the country, and that's the least probably maybe we can do, right? And hopefully some of these things will trigger the so-called conscience of the institutions or the people associated with it. We can only hope that. Till then, we make do with whatever we have, I guess. Thank you.
Suhas, Kolekar, have these discriminatory experiences increased since 2014 and change of parties at the center with present Home Minister and Prime Minister? Do the law college students also face? I'm not sure why would it be any different? I don't know. Any kind of.
Well, no, not really. I mean, I think one of the only things I can figure out is that our students in law colleges are slightly more aware of their legal rights and grievance redressal mechanisms. I mean, they would be aware of the rules which are applicable. They would like to know. I mean, if somebody is not filing an FIR, they know how to actually go about it. Maybe slightly better, but nothing much. I don't really think that this kind of this is a deep and systemic problem. This is not simply about which party is in power at the union government or the state government as such like that. I mean, of course, over a period of time, I have seen people in this country in general, grow slightly more or expressive of their intolerance maybe over the past few years. But I don't think that having a different party in power would probably have made that much of a difference. It's a social problem, not. I mean, it's also a political problem, very much that. But it's not. It can't be maybe one of the contributing factors. But there are certainly enough number of factors which are there, which are independent of which party is in power and which party isn't. Because the moment we start thinking, saying that the entire issue lies because of XYZ political party in power, we are somewhere saying that we are not doing anything to contribute to the problem wherein we are. And when we start to figure out how we can make our change, most of the issues that have been pointed out, the solutions which have been pointed out by George, Dipshanu, or other people, are things which we can probably start doing on individual capacity. And then, since the people who form the institution when they start getting into that state of mind in their individual capacity, that's how the institutional capacity changes. We don't have to wait for a UGC regulation, or we don't have to wait for a top-down model in order to get this thing done.
We talked about helplines. Are these functional?
This is probably something that Sharu and George would be able to tell me better compared to us.
People who are tuning in, are there any counseling and so on? Do universities do it? Mental health, or what about helplines?
Well, I mean, I do not think there are any special helpline for Northern students, right? So the SPUNER that's supposed to have been sort of formed in Delhi, it's there, it exists. So special police unit exists, right? But the problem is that they are supposed to be always in communication with the police and with the
So did George get stuck? As I can't hear.
Yes, I think we lost him.
With regard to some of the mental health facilities, the point he joins back, as in, like for example, my university has a dedicated counselor in place who provides mental health support in a different way. But and there is also another very simple fact, as in, when somebody is facing a problem, when they're trying to go to one of the students are planning to go to the law authorities and try to figure out some grievance redressal mechanism. It's a very simple thing. If there is, say, anybody who is part of the administration of that university, be it the registrar or somebody else, I have often seen that a simple phone call from the registrar or somebody to the nearest police station actually goes a long way towards overcoming the reservations that police have in accepting or listening to these students. Again, very simple thing. But when you do that, when there is a position wherein you can probably call up somebody at the institution and the person will escalate the matter up to somebody who can maybe put in such a call, it goes a long way to show that fine, maybe I'm being discriminated against by some people, but my institution is firmly behind me. And when you get that sense of belonging, it automatically shows, it adds on to your a little bit considerable comfort in terms of mental health to people also.
Okay.
I think
You
George is
wanted to
back.
say something? George, you wanted to continue? We lost you for a while.
Yeah. Sorry about. Yeah. So I was saying, yeah. So the special police unit in Delhi. I mean, it's in Delhi, so it's the capital of the country. It gets a lot of media coverage and a lot of focus, which is fine. It's supposed to be a melting pot of the country, which is fine. So there is a functional special police unit, but the problem is again, there seems to be, lacking in communication with the students and community leaders. I've been the convener of NESF, and I haven't really heard from any of these sort of special units, or even as I was telling earlier, the nodal officer in the campus. So there is a designated nodal officer, but I've never heard from him. Right. So these are just on paper. Okay, these steps have been taken. There are, people responsible for. They have been designated some in duties and all, but it's all on paper, right? So and then there is no special helpline as such. So there are sort of, again, it's very, so there are the common helplines for common students, which is fine, which is absolutely fine. But if you talk about special helpline or special arrangement, no, that's not there. I mean, right. So the special unit is there, but then again, when it comes to sort of communicating, being in touch with all the community leaders and students leaders and listening to them, what are the problems that they're facing, no, it always requires some political intervention from some political leader, or again, in the case of the Anjel Chakma, it required intervention from the MP, the sitting MP from our constituency, right? And also the intervention of NCST. Then the FIR was filed, right? So similarly in Delhi, I mean, there is the unit, but again, it's very difficult to get FIRs registered or complaint registered. And then again, if you manage to get your complaint filed or FIR registered, it will be on some very weak, BNS sections, or so. Again, there are problems. I mean, on paper, yes, the unit exists. On paper, there are nodal officers, but in reality, I mean, it's really not up to the mark. Yeah.
Is there a case for legislation, hate crime legislation?
Well, I do believe there is a case for legislation, right? There has to be legislation, and but for that there has to be legal recognition that race exists. There is racial division in this country, and then discrimination and exclusion on the basis of race exist, right? So that recognition has to be there. That acknowledgement has to be there. Right? That part is completely missing. That Indian state doesn't recognize race as a sort of legal category or something. But I do believe, yes, there has to be. I mean, if there is there are legislations on prevention of atrocities on STs. There's legislation on prevention of atrocities on SCs. Why can't there be legislation for prevention on the basis of race? Right. So I do believe, yeah, that has to be deliberated upon. Yes.
India is home to many races. I mean, scientifically, there's really very little to race. It's not a meaningful category at
Yeah.
all. But your appearance, there are some distinctions, and they form
I mean,
basis for
precisely,
hate,
right.
discrimination.
Hmm. Hmm. I
Okay,
mean,
Sunil.
scientifically, I mean, what is caste scientifically, right? But it still exists in our society, right? So
Certainly.
people from different castes are not
In terms of
scientifically different.
reality, are there real differences?
Hmm.
Not really.
Hmm. Hmm.
Okay, Sunil Johnson. Such bitter experiences are not confined to students from the Northeast alone. Across the country, discriminatory, it's something Dipshan was saying, discriminatory practices persist on campuses in various forms. It would be more effective if all affected students unite on a national platform to collectively raise their voices. Only then are such protests likely to reach the concerned authorities and prompt meaningful action to address the issue. It's a comment, not a question.
Yeah, and I agree with the fact that, of course, it's great if but you and I are facing some kind of discrimination, maybe on different grounds, if we can come together. But it's also a little bit, I mean, idealistic by that. I don't mean that it shouldn't happen. By all means, it should happen. But the fact remains that discrimination can also happen in layers. And unless and until somebody is actually facing a certain kind of discrimination by themselves or have seen it happen to people close to them, it is very difficult for them to understand that this is how the gravity of the problem. Say a person who is maybe a person with different abilities, the kind of discrimination that this person will be facing, and the kind of discrimination that, say, healthy, able-bodied male from Northeast will be facing, would be on completely different grounds. So it's often takes us a lifetime to actually figure out that the other kind of discrimination actually exists. And while it's great that if everybody can come together, I also believe that there is a strong case for, or specific category based discrimination. There has to be a way of addressing that category based discrimination also separately. It's great after that if people can work together, but for students who are facing discrimination because they are from Northeast, there has to be specifically catered solutions to that effect. I mean, at least that's my way of thinking.
Sunil Johnson is another point. He's saying, other than equal opportunity cell, why doesn't UGC come up with a standalone scheme exclusively for minority students, especially for those who are targeted? Point taken.
Yeah, I think UGC's 2025 regulations also had talked about. I mean, there was a proposal involved about prohibition of discriminatory practices and non-segregation measures as such. Uh, Yet to be seen how exactly that gets translated in reality, because what I have found personally, in my experience, is that a large number of measures which are proposed by the UGC, while the goals and the aims are fairly lofty in nature, most of the institutions treat these kind of things as basically a checklist, as George was saying, that on pen and paper only, just to ensure that NAC recognition or that NIRF ranking or that gets taken care of that side. I mean, but that's very, very unfortunate. I mean, these things were kept in place for achieving very clear goals and ends, but how exactly their impact has taken place, there is no impact analysis of these kind of measures being put in place. Until the point that is done, we can have X number of suggestions or recommendations by the UGC. Very easy to do those things on paper. Far more difficult to actually get those things happen and make a difference at the grassroots level. That's been my experience, at least.
Point taken. We have run out of time. I hope we have addressed some issues, touched the surface at least, and brought some kind of awareness to some people who tuned in, watched, and we hope something gets done, especially in terms of legislation, seriousness of intent and purpose, especially on the part of managements who do look for students from the Northeast, and perhaps something can be done to address the situation in the Northeast where they have to come long distance just to get a decent postgraduate education. It's one of the serious inequities in education in India, with higher education, especially in the Northeast. Something is done to address that. On this note, we conclude this webinar. It's been a very serious, eye-opening discussion. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
Thank you, George and Dipshad.